If you know me for a while, you know that beef tartare is one of my favorite recipes to do at home, and I'm trying a new variation today with sun-dried tomatoes, some pickle, garlic, and a couple of other good vegetables. All this and more on the Wonder UK Cheese Cafe, so stay tuned. Precious olives. They're probably one of my favorite side dishes to have ever since I did that vacation in Spain, but you already know that. But it's a good way to say, welcome to yet another edition of the Wonder UK Cheese Cafe. So here I am coming from my home for the first time in quite a little while. I'm gonna admit that usually my bread and butter is gonna be wandering the streets of Montreal to find good restaurants, bars, coffee shops, showing off the various roads, streets in the city, and trying to retrace my family's history. But I know that when I first started this channel, it was mostly a cooking channel I did during the pandemic when I was at home, we couldn't really go out, and it was my way of entertaining everyone while we were all locked in our houses. And no matter how many times I go through the city, I always have to go back to do at least a few grilling episodes or even some cooking episodes because it is part of my roots. And today what I thought I would do is revisit one of my favorite recipes, beef tartare. If you've been following me for the last few years, you've seen that I've shown off a lot on the channel with various little differences in restaurants, or even showing you how to make it at home. And actually, since I brought that up, if you want to watch that particular episode, I'll put a card in the top right corner for you and you can revisit that one if you want to see me doing the tartare on the deck just before summer vacation. But in this case, I'm going to be doing a brand new variation of it. Instead of the classic Dijon you get in a lot of French recipes, this one is going to be taking some sun-dried tomatoes. I know you might not think it's usual, but it's actually something I've seen a few times, including one spot that I'm going to reference very soon. But before we get into all that, here's my suggestion for you. Click that subscribe button below and put your notification bell on, because that way, if there's a new video ready to view, you're going to get a pop-up on your phone. And while you're at it, just give me a like on this. The more likes I get, the more my videos and various algorithms are going to be promoted all across the channel. Wait, I kind of mangled up my words over here. What I meant to say is that the likes are going to help the algorithms spread my cheese all across YouTube, so it does help me out. Of course, if I'm going to be doing a home episode, it means that I do have to have a beer over here, so I do have my vessel. I haven't used that gag since 2021. It's been a little while. This one's not going to be very different. It's one of my regulars was a variation of it, the Boréale IPA du Nord-Est, which is like a New England IPA. But it's another one of their episodes that they do where they have a strata type hop. You know, they've had a couple of other hops like Nelson Sauvin, Nectaron, Motueka, Crush. Not that Crush. I've got Donkey Kong Country on that brain for some reason. But each one of those hops have their own various flavors and something that's unique. In the case of this one, the strata hops basically taste like strawberry. Although it's not going to be a heavy strawberry flavor, it's very subtle. Plus you're going to have some notes of grapefruit and pine. Pine is not something I would have expected to eat, but you know, you can get pine nuts. And technically, if you're going into the soft drink world, there's also spruce beer, which they use the sap and the residue of a spruce tree. It's good, but not for everybody. I like it, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that it kind of tastes a little bit like liquid detergent. And no, don't ask me how I know how it tastes. I'm just making an educated guess. I never ate that stuff as a kid, thankfully. So here we go. The Strata IPA is here, and just on looking at it, this one looks like it's a little bit darker compared to my other ones, but it still clearly looks like it's orange juice from a certain angle. So, cheers everyone, and happy Friday. Well, happy whatever you want to celebrate whenever this drops. Delicious. Once again, it's a subtle strawberry, so whether you like your Ghostes, sour beers, or if you just like a regular IPA, this is going to be fun for everyone, so it has my approval. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, Beatles reference for the win, except I'm not going to use that music because I know if I do, this video is going to get blocked. I don't want to incur the wrath of Paul and Ringo. There we are. So we're gonna get a little bit of prep done before we do our beef. It's gonna be some simple ingredients that you're probably gonna have already in your pantry, or if you're like me, you probably have to go to the store and get the 1 or 2 that are required. But it's gonna be a very simple one. I've got here my medium mixing bowl and half a tablespoon here because the first thing I'm gonna do is put some dried parsley. And based on this, it looks like that I'm kind of running low on that because I did do a refill of my Herbe de Provence earlier in the week when I was putting together some chicken also. And yes, that's an easy thing to make too, and I'll put another card in the top right corner for you because that's actually one of my favorite things to do when I'm mixing Brussels sprouts, or if I want to put some in the rice, because it gives a good flavor without going overboard on salt. And I say without going overboard because there is no salt in there whatsoever. Everything else is natural herbs. Ideally, you'd want to use fresh parsley, but I don't usually use much fresh herbs in my cooking, and I feel like, one, it's not gardening season anymore. 2, if I'm gonna be going to the store, I don't think I would be getting the batch of herbs just for one bit of cooking if I don't use them very much. That's all besides the point. So, next thing I'm gonna do is add myself a clove of garlic. Now, when you look at a lot of these tartare recipes online, the traditional ones usually ask for shallots or like a French onion, or I think they call it the échalote française in French. So that's kind of like an onion that's a little sweeter, but not too overpoweringly. You know, not one that if you bite into it raw, then you're gonna just start crying. But other recipes I've seen, they could say that you could use garlic and it gets the same job done. And given the fact that I am Ukrainian, like I keep pointing out, it's a good excuse to add garlic into anything. So this Argentinian garlic I got at the store is pretty big. And I'm sure if you're looking at the recipes that ask for garlic, they say 1 to 2 cloves. This is probably the equivalent of 2 regular cloves you could get, you know, from the Chinese markets or like Chinese garlic in general. So I'll just peel this off. Then I'm gonna chop it into fine pieces, like basically mince it up. Come on. There we go, skin's off. And to make this, get some skin away from here. To make it easier to cut, I'm just gonna slice this in half. That way I can lay it flat on the cutting board and then just go like this. It may not be uniform and perfect, but once I mince it up repeatedly, it's gonna be fine. And it's gonna be mixed up with the beef. You may have to give this a few rounds too. Great. Finally got to the rest of the garlic, so that means I'm just gonna add this into the mixing bowl too. Well, you know what? I'll do it on camera so you can see me do it properly. So here we go. With the board there, and for any remnants, just scrape it off like that. There. And then keep that aside for now. And then another ingredient you could use are capers, which are pretty common when you're putting together tartare. Thing is that I haven't made tartare at home in a while, so the capers I did have kind of went bad and moldy and I had to dump them. But the reality too is you don't necessarily have to do capers. There is an alternative you can use, which is pickles, or like a cornichon as they would say. You won't need the full pickle, but you just take a piece of it off, slice it up, you know, dice it, and then add it to the bowl. And yes, these are homemade because these are actually relatively easy to make, and I'll put a card in the top right corner if you want to watch one of my older episodes of how to make them at home. So think I got like 1/5 of it here, so that should be enough. And I'm just going to put this into small 1/4-inch slices. Then once those are complete, I'll just dice them up further into smaller cubes, like so. There will be some liquid because there's always going to be some brine left over from the pickle or that was soaked into the cucumber, but that's fine. So you see this? There we go. All cut up, and hang on. It's like me having a cigar in my mouth while I'm putting together stuff. It's like I'm an old-time gangster. Dream on, kiddo. Here's looking at you, kid. There we go. I just did a little bit of cleanup of what was left over. So there's one more ingredient I want to cut up over here, and that is going to be my sun-dried tomatoes. This is the first time I've ever picked them up for myself for a recipe, but I have had them before. Like I've had it like in the other recipes, probably pasta dishes, because they go pretty well together. And Canadian Dave in the comments section has told me that if you put that with pasta, black olives, and olive oil, it's amazing. So it means that once I'm done with these, I'm going to have to put them together. And as for why I decided to use sun-dried tomatoes in my tartare today, well, the reason for that is because I was thinking back to going to a Brasserie Stella. It's a place that used to be the Galaxy Brasserie around Place des Arts, but they rebranded into some Italian bar. And the beef tartare they made over there actually had sun-dried tomatoes, which I thought I've never come across that before. And if you're wondering too, yep, I did document it as well. And I'm going to put a card in the top right corner for you so you can revisit that episode when I was going around in July to Place des Arts for Jazz Fest, going for a pint over at Benelux, and finally doing my supper at the Stella. Okay, I got most of the plastic out here. So the thing to remember too is that a lot of these tartare recipes are going to call for probably multiple servings, like you're doing it for 2-4 people or maybe more depending on the preferences. So they'd say some of these would say 6 to 7 tomatoes if you're doing, let's say, 400 grams of beef. But it's not going to be the same size for me, and I am going to explain afterwards why that is the case. So for all intents and purposes, I'm just going to start off with 2 pieces of tomato. Dice those up as well. And then once I'm done, I'm going to add them into the bowl with my other ingredients, and then I'm going to have the basic, probably like the basic remnants of it. Well, not remnants, like the basic dip and other ingredients before I put the cow. As for what they mix this in with, it looks like it's, well, spices, herbs, and canola oil. Canola oil is not something I really use in my cooking these days. I'm more an olive oil guy, and sometimes avocado oil if I want to do something with vegetables like eggplant, which go amazing with that type of oil, and etc. So here we go. Now, let's just get these diced up, and I'm kind of hoping that this binds all together. My thought was that if there was any kind of oil in here that it would kind of juice up and become like sticky to combine with the beef. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but worst case, if I do want to make sure it binds, I could just use like a small spoonful of Dijon mustard, maybe even olive oil, depending on the scenario. But I'm only going to know that when I have this all together. So let's finish up these tomatoes. These things are actually a lot more tough to cut than I expected, honestly. But you know what? It's all good. I am kind of stoked to try this out in my other recipe eventually. Okay, so hopefully this is going to be sticky again. Let's find out. Seems pretty solid, but I feel like I'm only going to really have a good sense of it once I'm mixing everything together. So these tomatoes, I'll put them aside. I'll clean up the rest of the mess that's on here, and I think there's one more thing I can do before we could get to the beef. And no, it's not sipping beer. It's something else that's a bit more productive. Although this is like my motivation when I'm cooking, so If people can drink wine while they're in the kitchen cooking, I can do my beer, thank you very much. So let's get this out of the way. And the next thing I'm going to be doing is slicing up the bread, because the typical thing to do when you're doing tartare is you have some croutons on the side so that you're able to scoop up your beef, put it onto the piece of bread, and then, well, devour it. This thing's a little bit soaked because it did start to rain when I was getting close to home, so not much you could really do. And it got to the point where this thing actually snapped, but whatever. I'll make the most of it. So I'm going to use the same board after I clean it up, but now I have my bread knife here. I think I first got this when I first moved into this house, started hosting some suppers, and then realized, yeah, I need to get some knives, because if we're going to be doing baguette to serve, I need something that's even better. Because growing up, everything that we had, everything that we were cooking was cut with either a steak knife or paring knife. So it took me a while to get used to what each knife is for. Now, it's a regular baguette here, but then what you could do, if you want to make this a little bit like how they look in the restaurant, is, well, hopefully this is going to be caught well on camera, but essentially what you do is you take your bread and then you go at, let's say, a 45-degree angle. And then the idea here is that you're going to have a little bit bigger pieces than if it was a regular baguette. This I'm just going to keep aside because I might just chew on this since I am getting kind of hungry. And then you just go here, make like maybe a 1/4 inch, maybe 1/2 inch slices. And then you continue on and then make as many slices as you think is needed. For the quantities that I make, I feel like, I would say it's gonna be a crapshoot. Sometimes 7 slices is good enough for my size tartare. Other times I'll do it close to 9 or 10 depending on it. But you know what? I'm just gonna make a little bit more, because even if I have more, I'll just have extra, and then I'll be able to, I don't know, munch on it, potentially even, well, you know what? There's no such thing as, actually no, I wanted to say there's no such thing as too much bread, but for some people who, let's say, are gluten intolerant, that's not even true. Too much cheese though? Unless you're really stingy and cheese is too expensive, there is no such thing as too much cheese.
Sunshine, open up your sleepy eyes for me. Can't have you hiding. I've been waiting all the night. People waiting for the light.
All right, so that's the last piece over here. So that's going to be like around 9 pieces. And just for the sake of simplicity and making things even, that last diagonal part, I just cut off into a slice into like a 90-degree angle. So that means it's going to be even here for whoever wants it. Or if I want to do a smoked salmon sandwich tomorrow, because I do love that stuff too. So here we go. I've got all the bread here. This I'm going to keep aside and then really only prepare that when it comes time to put together my beef. Like once that's ready, toast this up and then we'll be fine. And one thing I do have to admit, the benefit about doing your own tartare at home is that compared to a restaurant where they maybe only give you 4 croutons or pieces of bread like this, you can make as much as you want to spread it out so you don't have to ration it at all. So once I clean all this up, we're going to get to the next step, which is preparing the beef. Good old bread. All right, 1 bowl of cold water ready to go, because you are going to need this for when you're putting together your tartare. And that's just the one part of the water here. The other part is going to be the pot for when you're going to be cooking this, for lack of a better term. And I'm going to explain that a little bit in a second. So I'm just taking a small pot or saucepan, as you've seen before on like the spelling on the cooking, losing my words again, but what I mean is if you look up recipes, they'll talk about pots or saucepans like intermittently, like they can exchange it from one or the other. But I have a small one here because of the size beef I'm going to be doing. And I'm just going to put a little bit of salt in here, like not too much. But the idea is that you want to get this to disinfect your meat while it's so-called cooking. So here's the thing. If you look up a lot of recipes, they're going to say, get yourself a fresh piece at the butcher and then just rub a little bit of salt on it so you can disinfect the top and the bottom. But I know for some people it's not going to be for them, because if you want to be safe, or if you're worried about how the meat is prepared before if in case you get sick, this is another option too, where you just use a little bit of salt water, bring it to a boil, but then throw the meat in there for just a few seconds, just enough so that you can remove all the germs, microbes on the surface of it. Because beef is so thick and dense, microbes cannot penetrate into the center of it, which means once it's off the surface, you're fine to cook it. And that's the secret to how you're able to do your steak medium rare, or even rare if you want. Or if you want to just like looking cooked but still cold, or as they say in French, do you want to have your meat bleu? You know, that's the same thing. Now, I've also been asked before, what's a good kind of cut to use if I wanted to make my own beef tartare? Well, there are a few options here. Like I've looked up before that you can use filet mignon or like beef tenderloin. Thing is, if you're asking for 100 grams, that's almost $10 Canadian, sometimes even more depending on where you buy it from. But you could also do top sirloin. I've seen also recipes for inside round, although that one I wouldn't recommend it, just because if you get it maybe very thin and you just try to use this technique, it is going to be a little bit bland and it's going to feel like it's cooked. But you could also do it with bavette, or as they say, a flat meat steak in English, or even hanger steak, aka onglet. And I find that bavette and onglet are my two favorite cuts to use when I do the tartare, simply because it's a good balance between having good flavor, tenderness the way that you cut it, and also a little bit of fat to keep it kind of juicy. And that is the beauty of it, because in my fridge here, I picked up some onglet for myself, about 220 grams. But the thing is that my recipe, for a lot of my purposes, I find that 100 grams or close to a quarter pound of meat is the perfect serving size, given the fact there's a lot of, protein in here. I'm gonna have the bread, probably some vegetables too, so that's all I really need. So what I'll do is I'll cut off 100 grams, actually no, 110 grams, and keep the rest aside. As for what I'm gonna do with the rest, well, it's early November as I'm recording this, and there could be a chance over this weekend that I might be able to do a final grilling before it gets so cold that it's going to be hard to heat up the charcoal, and I'm hoping that they could cooperate. I've learned in the past that if you use charcoal like in the single digits approaching 0, it's really hard to keep the heat at 300 degrees, so something to keep in mind. Maybe one more indulgence with the new barbecue I bought this season, just to wrap things up before 2025 is over. Already. Man, time really flies, doesn't it? And here we are I have the range hood on, but for the purposes of this video, I'm turning it off because I want to hear my own voice in it. I'm sure you don't want to hear this noise while I'm talking. So the salt water is now on a boil. So what that means is it's time to get my meat in here. So like I said, you don't really want to keep it in there for so long that the whole thing cooks. The idea is that you want to keep it for maybe maximum 10 seconds so that it's able to kill the germs on the surface. And then after 10 seconds, you take it out and then put it into this cold water. Typically you're supposed to use like ice water, but since I don't have any ice around, this is gonna get the job done. And I'll just turn this off. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There we go. See? That's all you really need to do. And it looks like it's kind of cooked because if you're looking carefully, it does seem very brown, but that's only superficial. And I'm going to show you in a second what I mean by that. Now, usually you're supposed to keep the meat in the cold water for about 30 seconds minimum, but you can leave it as long as you want. Now, if you're wondering what I mean by it's all superficial for the brown, here's what to look at. I just shook off the excess water on here, and I'm just going to give this a cut. We'll see if this is captured well on camera, but what you're going to see here is, because it's such a thick piece, if you're to do a slice, then pretty much it's only the surface that got brown. Like, you're talking maybe 1/16 of an inch, but on the inside, it's still pretty raw. So that means that you're going to be able to do your slicing just like that and then cube it all up, which means we're going to have some fantastic tartare soon. But of course, I am going to need to get a bit more fuel to get myself energized to do this steak tartare. And right now I'm almost out of this legendary bear variant with the strawberry flavor. So that means I'm going to need another refill. And the good news is there's ones I want to get once again for myself. I might have shown it off twice in previous episodes, and it's basically called Petit Chicago from the Brasserie du Bas-Canada, or the Lower Canada Brewery. And it's Little Chicago, which is an IPA that has Citra, Cryo Citra, and Citra Incognito. So 3 Citra hops. Each one of them has, I guess, different flavors, but can't really tell you what they are offhand. But it's a good one for me that I love. And if you want to know where I had it for the first time, yes, it was 2024 on my summer vacation. So like the very last week when I was off, I went to the Yeast Pub around Rosemont La Petite Patrie that had, it's like nothing but Quebec beers, all served on tap, to like a lower degree than, let's say, Vices and Versa. Because Vices and Versa, it's 40 different beers, kombuchas, ciders, and everything else. Oh yeah, if you want to see that episode, then you could click on the link on the top right corner and we'll revisit that episode. I think I remember I was going through Myland as well, Noble Cafe, Casgrain Avenue, which basically has buildings from when that part of town used to be the garment district. So that was a fun episode. Now, they don't call this a New England IPA, but it kind of looks like one based on the color. The fact that it's unfiltered, it almost looks like it's some kind of a juice. But you know what? Whatever the case, it's a classic over here. Delicious. I guess any time is a good time for a good IPA. Yeah. Touché. I guess we could cue some Chicago since I am drinking a Chicago style beer. Plus I'm gonna allow because it is one of my favorite bands out there, so let's go for it.
As I was walking down the street one day, a man came up to me and asked me what the time was that was on my watch. Yeah, I said, does anybody really know what time it is? Does anybody really care? If so, I can't imagine why. We've all got time enough to cry. I was walking down.
Well, the meat is all chopped up and added to the pickles, to the sun-dried tomatoes and the parsley and the garlic. The only thing is that it feels like it's not going to bind together because it's all solid stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a very little bit of Dijon, like maybe take a tablespoon and do half a tablespoon worth. Put this in here, and then this is how I'm going to start mixing it up. Because the reason you want something that's binding is that if it's going to be liquidy with all the solid materials, you want it to kind of compress, or at least get the flavor, mix it all up, and voila. But it doesn't seem like it's doing as much. But at the same time, I guess when it's in the fridge, it's going to cool down a little bit too, which means then it's going to be more compact and you can have it basically as a compressed piece of paste. And you know what? I'm making a judgment call on this. I think just a little bit of olive oil is necessary for it, just to give a little bit more binding. I'm just not used to having it this way. But I guess the next time I do it with sun-dried tomatoes, then I'll be able to perfect it. Because I know the first time I did it on that Halloween episode where
He did the Monster Mash.
yeah, and that.
It was a great
When I did it the first time when I was preparing it while I still had Felix around, it didn't turn out exactly like a success. Like, it turned out a little bit more liquidy, but then over time I was able to experiment and then find out what the best mixture was. You know, time, effort, and everything else. So there you go. Once you're done, it's going to look like this. And then what you could do is you just keep it in the fridge to keep it cool. And then when you're ready to serve it, just take it out, make it into a little, well, something that looks like a burger technically, because it does remind me of that Mr. Bean episode from the past, which was my first exposure to steak tartare before I knew what the hell it was. Okay, actually it's not too bad. It's not as liquidy as the ones I made in the past, but it's still binding quite nice. So, I think the only thing left to do is add a little bit of a hot sauce, because I hate doing this on camera, but bear with me. Oop, almost lost it. So when you go to restaurants, a lot of times if you ask for the tartare, you can ask, do you want it spicy or regular? Which is kind of nice if you want to have some kick, but I'm not always in the mood for spice. In this case, I just got a small hot sauce here. It's not going to be exactly spicy like a sriracha, just enough to give it a little bit of extra flavor. And maybe a bit more liquid to kind of bind it up. So, I'm opening it up. Doing a very small pour. There. So something that's like the equivalent of maybe half a teaspoon worth. Maybe close to a teaspoon. And then with that, I'm going to mix it even further. And then after that, we'll just prepare the rest of our meal. My pot is now washed, and I'm going to be using this to do the final step of my meal. Now, of course, if you're going to be going to a restaurant, you're always going to get the option of getting fries or salad on the side with your tartare. Some places, if you're lucky enough, will give you a mix of both so that you get some vegetables and some fried goodness at the same time. At home, sometimes I'll do fries, but try to have a healthy amount of vegetables because, well, obviously you need your vitamins and minerals here. And I'm not doing my usual Brussels sprouts like I've shown many times on my barbecue. I just got some broccoli and asparagus. It was at a decent price at the store today, and I thought, I love this stuff. I don't prepare it as often, so let's make up for it. So what I'm going to be doing is, well, first off, if you haven't put together asparagus, typically what you do is you take the whole stem. I'm just going to be showing you this. And then all you got to do is snap it in half until the base is picked off. And then this part, you're going to be eating. You can have it raw, but what I plan to do is I plan to rinse it out, steam it up just to soften it up. But the broccoli, I am going to be having raw because it's a great raw. It's also great steamed. It's great grilled. It's great baked. It's actually one of my favorite vegetables nowadays, along with Brussels sprouts. And then at the same time, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be getting my oven up to broil, and then I'll be able to toast the bread. You can sometimes dress this up whatever you want. Like you could put olive oil, you could put oregano, garlic powder, so it kind of feels like a garlic bread. But the truth is that everything else is going to have so much flavor that you won't necessarily need it. This, once it's toasted, it's going to be good enough. And here we are. So, just as a recap, I did some homemade beef tartare for the first time in a little while, but I used sun-dried tomatoes along with some of my usual ingredients like garlic, parsley, pickle, olive oil, a little bit of Dijon to kind of bind it all together. We got some steamed asparagus, broccoli, and my usual croutons. So, I'm not going to be doing a taste test of the veggies because we already know what that's like. I'm just curious to see what this tartare is like with the new ingredient. So we're going to be doing the taste test on camera. Oh yeah, this stuff is amazing. Tomatoes really give it a good taste, like a different flavor. It's not quite the same as when I was over at the Stella Brasserie, but homemade, it's fantastic. And the spice kicked in, we got the fresh garlic too, so I'll be able to ward off any remaining vampires from Halloween. Amazing. And once again, the beauty too is that if you do it at home, you can do as much croutons or as little croutons as you need, unlike at a restaurant where it's like 4 or 5 pieces all together. And to think, if I was to look at the price of this, that compared to going to a restaurant where it could be $18 to $25 for like as an appetizer, or even sometimes $35 for the full course, this is probably done at a fraction of the cost, so that's insane. Really easy to do, so if you like raw beef, highly recommend it again. But I shall enjoy the rest of this, enjoy my brew, and see what else happens. So until then, everybody, thanks for watching this latest edition of the Wanyuki Cheese Cafe. So if you like what you see, you know what to do. That's right. Click that subscribe button below. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoy the recipes I do at home, the wanders I do in the city, the backyard grilling I take care of during the summer, and everything that comes with it. And if you have any ideas for future episodes, leave them in the comments and I'll see what I can do for you. Until then, take care, see you next time, and above all else, enjoy the ride. And maybe enjoy the vibes too, because since this is a really nice meal, it's cozy, it's fall, I want to feel very atmospheric, so maybe some candlelight.